I'd like to begin by thanking the conference sponsors and the organizing committee. I thank them because they've not only given me this opportunity to talk with you, to run with the big dogs, but also for giving me some validation that environmental history can help us understand the American Revolution. My paper here, which looks at the science behind making saltpeter, is part of a larger book project that brings together environmental history and the War of Independence. It's a project that's been moving at a glacially slow pace, but this conference has already sparked some ideas that I think will get things moving along. And I'd like to mention just a few of them here given the short time I have at the podium. Yesterday morning's theme focused on global perspectives, and there was a question from the audience about other places besides the Americas and the Atlantic. Well, environmental history can help here. My paper examines how Americans made saltpeter for gunpowder, which naturally leads to the question, how did the British get their saltpeter? And almost all of it came from northeastern India. So what effects did wartime demand have on that environment? Deforestation for sure, and many others that I'm just starting to investigate. Similarly, what happened to the forests of northern Europe and western Russia, which supplied fir trees out of the port of Riga to the Royal Navy, fir trees that were used as masts for the ships of the line. Yesterday afternoon, we talked about the disaffected. Michael McDonnell suggested that a person's position was shaped in part by pre-existing conflicts. He also noted that some of the disaffected could tack back and forth from one side to the other, or they could keep their heads down and stay out of trouble. And environmental history, I think, may offer some additional ways for thinking about these issues. For example, were there particular natural features, say, on the land that may have been the basis for some of those pre-existing conflicts? Maybe control over a valuable resource may have given a person the power to approach one side first and then the other. Maybe a livelihood involving, say, offshore fishing or whaling may have enabled someone else to escape the conflict altogether. Now, I know that not all of you are going to be interested in diving into biology and chemistry and carbon-nitrogen ratios and the things I mentioned in the paper, but I still think environmental history has a lot to offer us. These interactions between loyalists, the disaffected, and rebels got me thinking about an environmental analogy that may be useful. Landscape ecologists study, among other things, the edges between two types of habitats. Think of a clearing in a forest or a field next to a forest. These edges of these habitats provide a transition zone where sunlight, moisture, wind speed, temperature, and other variables are different than what you find in the heart of either the forest or the field. Now, what if we thought about these communities of disaffected, loyalists, and rebels as separate habitats? Aaron Sullivan talked about rebel communities putting pressure on their inhabitants. Take this oath, join that militia. What happens if a loyalist community, no matter what size, appears and creates an edge? Can we come up with then variations in the natural analogies, to the natural variations in sunlight or wind speed or moisture? Maybe what things come into play now are economic opportunities or cultural appeals or social ties. And then how does this new arrangement here change the first community's pressure? The edges between forest and fields with its mixture of habitats can also lead to a rich diversity of species. Some are drawn to and thrive on the edge, generalists like raccoons or coyotes, and other species can't survive in or even enter the edge. So can the same be said about certain loyalists or disaffected or rebels? What would a generalist disaffected person look like? Someone who can tack back and forth from one side to the other. What kind of rebel would not be able to come into contact with loyalists? Furthermore, I think there are some surprising relationships that can develop on the edge. In north central Florida, there are certain forest-dwelling birds that won't go into the edge unless they see the tufted titmouse there. And that bird might be signaling that the area is safe. Okay? So the reliance of one species on another might get us also to think about different ways to think about how Travis Gleason, what he talked about with Newport. Did the intimate connections there in Newport facilitate the movement and survival of others in that edge environment? I bring up edges because they make a particularly apt analogy for this conference. Let's think of this hall as an edge zone. The academic forests of Penn and Drexel are over there. The public history meadow of Independence National Historic Park is over there. And we've all been drawn into this edge zone, joined by school teachers, retirees, lawyers, independent scholars, docents, tour guides, librarians, and many others. And you have specific knowledge about particular places and specific times. And by sharing that knowledge, we make this edge zone especially rich. There's one more feature about edges that I think is appropriate. Once an edge develops, certain conditions can lead to the growth or expansion of more edge. Once some trees have fallen in a forest and create a clearing, now other trees are exposed to higher wind speeds, and there can be more blowdowns and more edge. Now, this could be useful for thinking about how people interacted in the Revolution, but for now, I want to keep the focus on us. Now that the conference sponsors and the organizing committee have created this edge zone, I think the conditions are right for us to go out and create more edge in our home habitats. May this vibrant diversity of participants spread out and flourish. Thank you.